Now we're gonna turn over to Dr. Tom Brenna, and he's going to host us in a panel discussion. So if you have any questions, go ahead and raise your hands. But he's going to start with some questions from the online audience.
I'll start with one.
Okay.
That's come in from
the online. Yeah.
Cyberspace.
Okay.
The great virtual ocean in the sky. How do you know if you are getting enough seafood and omega-3s to get the health benefits you discussed today? And you is plural, so it can be any of you, it's not just Joel. So who'd like to handle that one?
That was her topic.
You're Gretchen.
Gretchen talked about
I think Gretchen should handle it in about 10 sentences.
Okay. 10. I'm allowed 10. Okay. Well, it's generally agreed that all of us should get about 250 milligrams of EPA and DHA a day. We can get that if we eat fish 2 to 3 times a week. That's why all the national health organizations recommend that. 250 is considered a minimum. Among international societies, a minimum of 500 milligrams a day EPA DHA is recommended for cardiovascular health. But really, a gram, 1,000 milligrams, is recommended for general, if you want to be a little more proactive for heart health, mental health, inflammatory response, and stuff like that. So eating seafood a couple times a week gives you your basics. Eating more has other advantages and benefits.
Excellent. Anyone want to add to that?
I have something to add. Someone asked earlier, I think it was somebody on the AV team, if you can get too much seafood.
We have a question.
Well,
You want to talk about the Seychelles Islands and how many meals?
Indeed, or would you like to?
Well, I don't remember exactly how many meals a week they eat, but it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 meals per week.
Yes, that's right.
Seafood that they eat in the Seychelles Islands, and for there have been a lot of studies because, of course, with that seafood they get some mercury, which is a bad word we don't want to talk about today. But they were surprised because they were getting higher cognitive scores in the children, and they couldn't figure out why the mercury wasn't damaging them. And so I think that's a culture that eats a lot of seafood.
That's
without
absolutely,
any potential, any harm that anyone's figured out.
Yeah, that's right. In fact, so the Seychelles Islands are in the Indian Ocean and were originally, let's say, studied. A study started years ago, 30 years ago, by toxicologists who thought they were going to find toxic effects because they eat so much fish there. And what they found was exactly the opposite, that the kids were smarter. And in fact, if you look at some of the relationships, you'd almost think that mercury was good for you, because the more mercury in mom's hair, the better the kids performed. I'm not making that up. I know these guys, and that's what the data say. So, so one other way to think about it is that there are many cultures that eat 10 times more fish and seafood than we eat in the United States. So when you start to get much past 10 times what we eat here, then I'd start to maybe look more carefully, but we're nowhere near those kinds of numbers. So, okay, there's that. Let's see. Is supplementing DHA better than eating seafood to prevent preterm births? I think that's a Susan question. Dr. Carlson.
Well, the reason we use a supplement is because you can standardize things and you can pretty much hopefully guarantee if people are compliant that they're taking the DHA. If I had my preference as a nutritionist, of course, I'd rather they did what Gretchen suggested, which is eat 2 meals of seafood for all women who are in childbearing years, and that they come into the pregnancy with that kind of diet. They keep eating it through the pregnancy. And it would be in the same levels that we're finding are beneficial. So is it better? No, but it's the pragmatic way to do a clinical trial.
So I'm going to throw in a question of my own for the RDs. So I looked at the data not that long ago, and about 20% of pregnancies occur in the United States in women below the age of 20. how do we get this message through to them? A lot of what we've heard about today, not presented by you folks, but presented by others, seem to be sort of other categories. So how do we get that message through for the first pregnancies and for those folks?
Well, just off the top of my head, I think about like WIC programs and feeding programs and things like that. These are health educators. They're not necessarily dietitians that work for WIC oftentimes, but are they educated? Do they know what to say? What do their handouts look like? Who's providing those handouts? Is that the information that we want them to give? And who's really monitoring that? I think that's a place that Seafood Nutrition Partnership really, we want to get to in the future. We're not quite there yet, but we want to provide information for healthcare professionals because it's science-based and that's what they need to know.
There is, so
Yeah.
it's part of the WIC program, which unfortunately a lot of these women 20 and under are probably part of, which is the Women, Infant, Health, Children.
Women, infants, and children.
And children program. There is a requirement in order to get the funds to get education. And so Seafood Nutrition Partnership about 5 years ago worked with wicchealth.org, which I don't know the exact number, I think it's
38 states.
38 states. Their WIC programs utilize that, and so there is seafood curriculum up on that. And along with education, there's a lot of recipes on there that feed a family of 4 for under $10. So really trying to be aware of high omega-3, especially fish and shellfish, that is also budget friendly.
Very good.
Could I mention one thing
Please.
that I think, we haven't heard anybody talk about the proliferation of sushi restaurants. There are a lot of them in Kansas City. We're in the middle of the country, and the reputation is we don't eat much fish, but I see young people flocking to every sushi restaurant in town. I think we're already kind of educating young people. They're getting introduced to the seafood that way.
And there's
Their
good
friends-
cooked sushi too for pregnancy.
Yeah.
Well, actually, that's right for pregnancy. The cooking's an issue, correct?
Yeah.
One wants to more or less stick to cooking, but you can do cooking with
There's great California
sushi,
rolls.
yes, that's
But it's
right.
a way to get introduced to tuna, to salmon,
Do you want
to
to see if
octopus,
there's
to all these
questions in
different.
the audience?
Oh, yes. Any questions in the audience? They're all enthralled with this.
Oh, there's one in the back from
Andrea.
Looks like Andrea.
Hi, yes. So I'm wondering, when you're buying fish oil supplements, oftentimes they're listed separately with the amount of DHA.
Okay, can everyone hear me? Hi, I'm wondering, when you're buying fish oil supplements, oftentimes I notice that the percentage of DHA and EPA are different. And secondly, how do DHA and EPA help the kidney process proteins?
I can take the first part.
Why are there different
So
numbers?
fish oil, it depends, most fish oil, a lot of fish oil comes from anchovies, pressing the oil from anchovies. And then there's also a lot that comes from a sustainable source in Alaska. So you get the oil, and EPA and DHA naturally occur in the oil, and you press it and concentrate the EPA and DHA. In dietary supplements, you can change, like for prenatal, you want more DHA. If it's something for inflammatory health, you might want more EPA. And those are a way to diversify products on the market. Truth be known, we need them both, EPA and DHA. So I think people get too hung up on more of one than the other when they both have benefits for different reasons. So I would encourage, just keep it simple and get a good amount of EPA and DHA per serving. Always look at the serving size, 1 capsule, 2 capsules, things like that. On the kidney, I don't know. I don't think there's
I
any.
don't understand
What's
that.
the concern?
I'll tell you why I ask. My son has a protein processing issue with his kidney called FSGS, focal segmental glomerular sclerosis. It's a mouthful. His nephrologist has prescribed 2,000 milligrams of fish oil a day. And I don't understand the connection. So his kidney is not processing proteins properly. There's a slight bit of blood and protein in his urine all the time. It's not life-threatening, but he may need dialysis someday. So I'm just wondering, what is the connection between the DHA and the EPA that's helping his kidney
Oh, it's
process the
anti-inflammatory.
protein
Yeah.
properly.
It's very possible that what this is an inflammatory condition, and the physician, I mean, we don't have an MD on the panel here, but if it's an inflammatory condition, then the physician may be trying to help him, as Dr. Calder talked about. It's anti-inflammatory, and it also has resolution of inflammation in inflammatory situations.
That's quite a specific case, too. So there may be other things that they're thinking.
Yeah.
The anti-inflammatory, pro-resolving, antithrombotic properties of these molecules
Could be that, too.
are usually connected in some way to these sort of below-the-neck health issues, and I distinguish that from above the neck, which would be brain. But there also may be something specific that we don't know about that special condition. So,
And it does make you think about anti-inflammatory for the public, like cardiovascular disease, diabetes. What are your guys' thoughts
COVID?
on? Yeah,
Well,
COVID. I mean, does everybody
we wrote-
need to be taking a supplement if they're not getting seafood?
We wrote very early on about, last year, in a paper that we put out, that since COVID is characterized by the cytokine storm business is inflammatory, and then the thing we learned fairly early on is prothrombotic, that is clotting. There's little blood clots all over the place, and that's a lot of detail in that. But considering the population-wide consumption of EPA, DHA, which we heard about today, you can pretty much assume that the vast majority of the population is at the very low end. And we may well be more susceptible to these kinds of conditions as a result of our general status.
Conspiracy theory.
Communications person, we'll look at Andrea.
I mean, I think a lot of consumers come to seafood for health. If there are consumers looking for a healthy food, they come to seafood that has that health halo to it, and omega-3s are well known. I think one of the trends that we've definitely seen in the past year and a half, but even prior to that, is more people are concerned and eating for their health. We have an obese society and a society with a lot of chronic disease, and that wasn't top of mind for many consumers. So even though if they knew the health benefits of seafood, it wasn't that they were eating for their health, they were eating for their pleasure. And you can have both, and I think that's what a lot of people are really realizing in the past year, that wellness, that your health matters. And so I think that really correlates strongly to the increase of interest and in sales of seafood, and hopefully will kind of continue.
And I'll make a vague allusion to the conspiracy theories that are popping up in my head all over the place, and just say that the food industry is enormous, and there's lots of food wars that have been going on for well over 100 years. So it's not just a simple sampling of what's out there, but it has actually been 40,000 studies and over 1,000 randomized trials in EPA and DHA and we're still going with this.
A live question right here from our chat right now.
Okay.
So Jenny Shea-Ron wants to know, when advising consumers to choose sustainable seafood, what's the best simple message for them?
Choose.
Sustainable seafood. What's the best message for choosing sustainable seafood?
I can take that.
One of these guys knows.
Or to look, I guess, look at the camera. Hi, Jenny. Hope you're having fun in Cape Cod. I would say 80 to 90% of all seafood at retail, at food service, is certified sustainable. There are I shouldn't say certified, they are sustainable buying practices in place. Every major retailer across America has a seafood buying department that works really hard to make sure that they know where that seafood is being sourced from. They work with their distributors, they work all the way through to the fishermen and farmers, oftentimes, to understand where that seafood is coming from. I think you can, if you are buying seafood in America, you can have pretty good confidence that it is a strong consideration when coming in.
Great, thanks.
And then look for certifications and labeling as well.
There are some certifying bodies. I'm trying to remember the Monterey one.
Well, there's
ASC
MSC certified.
and
ASC.
MSC.
MSC is a blue label.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
we'll for wild capture. I mean, there are several. The ones that you would see most predominantly would be MSC for wild capture, and now GAA, which is Global Aquaculture, or sorry, BAP, which is Best Aquaculture Practices, and ASC, which is Aquaculture Stewardship Council, sorry. For aquaculture or farmed. BAP is kind of working into doing some more wild capture as well. And so there are additional others. There's fair trade and others that are on a global scale. Alaska has certification as well.
Yeah, Alaska RFM.
Alaska RFM.
Yeah.
So there are things you can look for. Most commercial seafood is sustainable because there's not many people in the U.S. selling unsustainable stuff anymore. And then there are certifications if you're really concerned about it. You can look that up. We have a question in the back there.
Hi, I just wanted to address that question about how do you know if your seafood's sustainable? In the U.S., we're working really hard at keeping our fisheries well managed. So if you buy something that's U.S. caught, you have at least a 90% chance that it is going to be caught in a sustainable manner. If you look at NOAA fisheries, you can find that number and the statistics better than I can offer them right now. But U.S. caught fish or seafood is going to be, you have a pretty good chance at getting a sustainable seafood.
Great, thanks for that contribution. Yes. That's great. That's the same idea. We have another question right in the front here.
Are there agencies of this government or the UN that are working on ocean health? What are the best policies about improving ocean health?
I think we had Paul here, and he would know all about that, I would think. Is he still here?
I think he had to
He had to head off. Paul Doremus, who spoke, is a National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA administrator, who would be able to address that directly. So I think the answer is yes, there are federal agencies. That's one of them that would be looking at ocean health and keeping track of that. I think sustainable fisheries are part of that. And the fisheries around North America, at least going from what I've heard Paul say over the years and others that we've had in previous symposia here, have indicated that there are some, that most of the fisheries in the world, other than the ones along the Pacific Rim, are sustainably managed. Ocean health is a slightly different question, I realize that, but I think that they go hand in hand. So I think that, does anyone else have anything to add on that, considering
we've got some experts here too. I'm going to call on Erica Feller.
Okay.
They're on the spot.
People in the room are experts
She's
on
say
some
yes.
of these topics.
I don't necessarily have a whole lot to add to the answers that have been given. I mean, for MSC, we certify fisheries in the U.S. Probably about 80% are certified sustainable under our standard, which also includes impacts of the fishery on, sustainable harvest levels, impact of the fishery on the ecosystem, as well as evaluating management. So that's included in MSC, but it's also included as part of Magnuson Act, that when the government manages, they also think about a lot of
the Magnuson Act, right?
Magnuson.
Okay.
Well, that list of concerns that one of the last speakers had of
The mic is coming. One more comment, please.
that list of concerns that consumers have, mercury and the micropolymers, and I was trying to study that list, but it went up and down a little quickly. I mean, if that is an obstacle to consumers, I think this group needs to think about that and address it at the next symposium.
Thanks. We appreciate that comment very much, and it is something that we have addressed at previous symposium, will always be on the radar screen for the next one or the next one. I think that's fair. Okay, thank you for the comment. I have a question here. Is the Eat Seafood America campaign like the Got Milk or Love One Today avocados campaigns for seafood? Does it use the same marketing strategies?
Andrea.
Well, that's another one for Andrea. Okay.
That's an interesting question. I'm Andrea Albersheim, and I am the Director of Communications for Seafood Nutrition Partnership. So Eat Seafood America is a little bit of a primer because we haven't really talked too much about it today. It was a big topic of last year's symposia. It launched in the very beginning of April 2020, right after we were hearing from kind of across the supply chain of seafood industry that there was COVID was just really impacting everyone in a lot of ways. There was a lot of seafood to be had. The restaurants were closed down and they needed to redistribute a lot of that seafood to retail. They needed to get it direct into consumers' hands. It's a perishable product. But with that, we needed to educate consumers more about how to cook seafood at home, make them feel comfortable eating at home. Right after we launched, there was a survey that was alluded to earlier today that from what did people miss most with restaurants closed down? And number 2 was seafood. And number 10 was actually sushi. So seafood was on there twice. And it's funny because a lot of people still had access to sushi because that wasn't shut down in the same way that most restaurants were. But people were missing their seafood. And we saw that with retail numbers last year that went up. We launched it for 2 reasons. One, talking about the health benefits. That's who S&P is. Really looking at how Americans can stay healthy during the pandemic, talking about the immune health benefits that Dr. Calder addressed today, talking about sleep, anxiety, stress. Those omega-3s are so important, especially EPA, on calming you down. And this has been a very stressful year and a half for everyone. So really just trying to help Americans stay healthy, those anti-inflammatory benefits as well.
So the Eat Seafood America campaign is part of that, or?
This is Eat Seafood America, and then the other side is helping those fishermen and farmers, and we've, this is a good question, I guess, but I think at the moment it is it's something that we're running with over 50 partners across the country, with retailers across the country that have signed on. It's not a commodity board like these are. These are all run by, like Got Milk is Milk Pep, and Love One Today is Haas Avocado Board. These are not commodity boards under the USDA, or those are commodity boards under the USDA program. We're just a little nonprofit, kind of partnering with a whole bunch of other nonprofits. So
not yet. It's an aspiration, right?
Not yet.
And Eat Seafood America, the symposia from the presentations from last year are available on our website, on the SNP website. So one can have a look at that as well. So let's see what else we have here. Are there any other questions in the room? Anybody over there?
What has been the reach and impact?
What has been the reach and impact? I think you already answered that.
Well, I can just, somebody asked, what's the reach and impact of Eat Seafood America campaign? Just quickly, in the past year and a half, we've over 2 billion impressions. How do I?
That's another one.
Oh yeah, how do I help promote the Eat Seafood?
How do I eat? Do we have a ringer out there?
Hashtag Eat Seafood America. So we're really working with retail partners across the country to help educate their consumers. And really a similar strategy to what Arlen talked about, really finding out who that audience is that we can just increase 1 seafood meal a week, going from once a week to twice a week to really meet that goal. And so we just broke down all that data and found that our key target audience, and that actually goes right into that next question, which is for Jessica, about how can I get my family to eat more of it, which I'm going to
yes, Jessica,
over to you, because it's we found that the audience was 35 to 55-year-old women, or families, men and women, and that the family really mattered if they were interested in health benefits and interested in wanting to increase their seafood consumption. Punting.
So what's the question?
The question is, I know it is healthy for me to eat seafood. How can I get my family to eat more of it?
Yes, that's a very good question. And it is tough because especially families are so busy right now. I'm a mom of 3, and every night we have practices and reading and homework, and getting seafood on the table or dinner on the table in general is not easy. The good part about seafood is it's super quick, so you can thaw it in 10 minutes in some cool water, and then you can cook it in another 10 to 15 minutes, most species, so that's really nice about seafood. And put it into some familiar dishes for your family. And my kids are picky, they just are. They don't eat whatever's on their plate, so I have to kind of disguise it by adding things like crab into mac and cheese, or doing like a fish taco or a shrimp pizza. But we have a lot of really good recipes on our website, so utilize those.
And the next question is a perfect segue into that. What are some ways for me to incorporate seafood into my kids' meals? We talked about that in previous ones, the little Seafoodies campaign.
The website is still active and has some really great recipes. Right? It's littleseafoodies.com. Lots of fun cooking tips, moms sharing their little hacks and stuff like that. It's fun.
Yeah, have a look at the website. We're delighted to get these questions, but have a look at the website, and there are some resources there that people could use. Okay, keep going.
Any other questions here?
Oh, yes, right. We have any other questions? I don't see any other hands up, but
I've already answered this.
anything else there online?
Yes, there's one right there.
She's not. Oh, no, I got that one. She's doing something else online. That's fine. What are some easy and quick tips to incorporate seafood into my family weekly meals? I think we're getting I see a trend in these questions.
See, they're busy, tired, working moms. We're exhausted.
I don't want to spend too much time in the kitchen.
Yes. So see,
I mean, that's
again,
not me. That's the person who wrote this.
And you can use.
I mean, I don't either.
And you can use canned and pouched, things like that. Super easy, super fast. Take advantage of sales and stock up during sales. And there's a lot of fun little gadgets and things you can do now. I bought during the pandemic. Who bought an air fryer? Anybody? I did. So putting salmon in the air fryer, that's super. It's a 10-minute dinner. There you go. Steam
Cook on
some veggies.
Sunday.
Yeah, you can batch cook ahead of time.
Cook
a
on
big
Sunday. That's
seafood
why I do
pasta, freeze it later on in the week.
That's
so.
it. See, I did this. Okay.
Nice. Very nice.
Just ask Tom.
Let's see. Oh, we still have some time. Do we have any other questions? We have. Oh, what?
I'm just reading this.
No, don't read that. That's like the last thing. Okay. Let's see. Wait. I had some.
Uh-oh.
Well, I already asked that one.
He is a professor. I
already asked that one. Here's one, a very scientific one. Wait, I'm not supposed to look that way. Okay. So, Dr. Carlson, you spoke about compliance and negative results, and we do see news stories that say DHA doesn't work, omega-3 doesn't work, but then when you look into the details, what you find out is maybe compliance was an issue. You did speak about this a bit, but for the average person, when we and from the scientific point of view, it's intent to treat versus per protocol. We talk about that. Could you sort of say a few words about that? Are we always actually looking at people who are taking DHA, or is that sometimes lost in the stories, for instance?
Well, so intention to treat means that if you assign someone to the experimental arm of a study, you're required to include them in your analysis whether they do the experimental part or not. So in design of trials, we know this happens, and we make some estimate of what percentage of people will do this, and then you include enough people in the trial when you do your power analysis that you have enough. But I think maybe what you're getting at here, so of course, per protocol means you can then go back. You have to analyze it that way because that's the way NIH-funded studies require you to analyze. And the risk there is you'll get a no effect. It's very unlikely you're going to get a adverse effect. You just might get a no effect in the trial. So it is true that we have many clinical trials where people say, I have to enroll 6,000 people to get an answer to this question, and they only enroll half. That's the biggest risk in clinical trials, is that they do not meet the recruitment goal. But it rarely, like I said, rarely results in anything negative. What it can be confusing to the public is that you get a no effect trial, and then you get another trial that has an effect, and how do you translate that? So.
I was going to say, I have a question about compliance. And so I think we have a lot of registered dietitians who are watching from home. Thank you, hi. I think that's something that they have issue with when they're talking to a lot of their clients and patients as well. And so maybe this is for the two registered dietitians on the panel, but as well as you, have there been any kind of tricks or anything that you found that works when you're talking to either the people enrolled in the trial or patients on how to increase compliance?
Well, one of the ways you can increase compliance is you can have more frequent contact with your subjects. And I think, honestly, this may be a little bit of a problem in the ORAP trial that I talked about that had over 5,500 women in it. How do you keep track of 5,500 people and make sure they're actually, you're reminding them once in a while that they have a bottle of capsules they're supposed to be taking? You know, we maybe had an advantage there. Certainly our response would suggest so, that we had more compliance. But we also, you know, there's really not, this is a problem in everything. There's an obstetrician who was on my trial, and we've had a lot of conversations, and one of the things he said to me was, Susan, even when you tell people who've had a heart attack that if they don't take this med, their likelihood of having another heart attack is high, 50% of them do not take the drug prescribed by their doctor. So this is a problem nobody knows how to deal with exactly.
And I'm just going to amplify or just clarify also that when we're talking about compliance, it surprises most lay people that when we're referring to analysis, when an individual is assigned to take a fish oil capsule and they just don't take it, they're still counted as having been in the group that was assigned fish oil. So you end up with an analysis of the controls that didn't take fish oil and the experimental assigned to fish oil who didn't take the fish oil either. And so then we don't get a result. And that's what's really confusing in the results of many of these trials. I've just explained in just a different way what was just said.
Yeah.
We have another question in the back there from the web.
Yep, this is from our chat. Linda asked, does the FDA have an updated analysis of mercury? This is all she sees. FDA 1990 to 2012, National Marine Fisheries Service Survey of Trace Elements in the Fishery Resource Report of 1978. The occurrence of mercury in the fishery resources of the Gulf of Mexico report in 2000. In a world where we need to address sustainability, why would this seem to stop?
I heard 4 days. Which one was the, I thought I heard 4, maybe not.
I think the overall question is she hasn't seen an updated report since 2012.
Okay. So I have a couple of things to say about that. There's likely to be updates, and I'm not on top of exactly what the latest one was. 2012 sounds okay to me. One of the things to look out for in these reports and in these descriptions of the foods that are, the fish that are, let's say, referred to as high in mercury, I think the consumer thinks of high in mercury as high relative to a biological level, an effective level. But the fact is that those designations are made by ranking top to bottom. Well, if you rank from top to bottom, something will always be the top, right? There's the tallest person in this room, but that doesn't mean they're going to scrape their head on the bridge when they walk underneath it. So the point is that it's a matter of definition, and so these designations has to be considered carefully. In my comments today, I referred to an abundance of caution used in setting guidelines 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago, and that they were connected to amounts of mercury and perhaps other pollutants. Mercury was the big one back then, but that was in the absence of any other information. The question is then, with all the data that we've had since, is it working out that way? And the answer is no. It has not worked out. It is not, our worst fears have not been realized. Only we just see more healthier kids and smarter kids with more fish consumption. So the amounts in a variety of seafood are not just safe, but healthy and ought to be expressed that way. That wasn't exactly what I was asked, but it's relevant to the question. I have one and two questions here. I hope so, so we can hear you.
Hi. I have a question about supplementation. So several years ago, I used to take fish oil supplements. And I know with supplements, you never know the quality. And then I had read somewhere or spoken with a nutritionist who said that many of the varieties are rancid, and that if you take one and you burp, it means it's rancid. And I found it really confusing. So I'm wondering, with all the supplements in the market, and obviously these are on the table, but how would just a regular consumer know what the best product is out there to purchase, or the safest, because it's not prescribed by your medical care professional?
I'm going to make a quick comment. We have a Gretchen works with a supplement group, so she can say a few words about that, and that's a disclosure also. But we have had some news reports of groups that have analyzed large numbers of fish oil and reported that they're rancid, and you go back and you look carefully at it, and the numbers were just not correct. And they are widely reported because it's a big deal. And so I actually am quite skeptical of those reports. Now, I'm not telling you, I'm not saying all bets are off, but there are organizations that says USP, that's one example. US Pharmacopoeia would be following a protocol and testing protocols and that kind of thing. I'm not sure how many groups use USP. Perhaps Gretchen can address this, this question as a, let's say, member of the industry.
Okay.
Or Harry.
It's a myth that's perpetuated, is the short answer. Most better fish oil, I don't even know how to answer this.
Where do I start?
Because
she's thinking,
really,
where do I start?
Yeah.
And after she's done answering it, just ask Harry.
Yeah, Harry might want to answer this, but better fish oil companies have their oxidation is measured in the raw material of the oil, and it's also measured after the product's been encapsulated, and then that capsule is put into a bottle that's airtight and light protected, right? So this whole idea of rancidity is really overblown, and I think the short answer is better companies. You kind of get what you pay for. When you buy a better oil product, if you look at the source, such as the United States and Alaska is always good, but there's other good sources too. If you look at that, if you're buying, if you're buying a really inexpensive fish oil, it's likely been processed in a way that is fast, quick, with good exposure, high exposure to heat, and is maybe more oxidized, but that's not always the case. But the flip side of that is, and not that I promote oxidation, but it's kind of like a so what. It's not, the EPA and DHA still work. It's not like the product's not going to work. But I think just kind of as a kitchen table type thing, you can bite into the capsule, and if it smells, I always say you don't eat bad fish, if a capsule's bad. Most capsules are good. Fish oil, you guys, overall the fish oil market, we need to, it's 2021. Oil is purified, it's fresh, it's a big business. Companies are doing a great job. Just take fish oil.
Can we get it?
Or eat fish, or eat seafood.
We'll give Harry 60 seconds.
Actually, excuse me.
Or 30.
Actually, I don't need 60 seconds. Gretchen did a great job of answering that, so I don't have anything to add.
Oh, nothing to add. Perfect. I saw another hand up.
Oh,
let's go over here. We've just got a couple more minutes, and then it's cocktail hour, right?
Yes.
Oh boy. Okay. And remember, DHA actually is good for balancing any effects of alcohol. So if you have a little too much, then you got the fish oil or you got some fish, okay? All right, anyway, last question.
I don't want to follow that. I just wanted to comment or come back to the compliance and somebody asking about how do you know if you're getting enough or you're actually getting omega-3s, and you can test it in your blood.
Yes.
It is one of the nutrients that actually goes up when you eat it. It goes up in your blood, and so you can measure it. I work at Omega Quant. That's what we do. But in research, it's very important as well because we know measuring people's status as they come into studies affects whether or not the omega-3s work or not. And so I just wanted to make that comment. You can find out if someone has been compliant in a research study or as a client. You can look at their blood. So that's just my comment.
Great. Well, thank you so much to our panel for today. And